The stars had always been cruel to humanity. For 50 years, Earth had reached toward the heavens, only to find chains waiting among the stars. The Galactic Council, a group of 12 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, made the rules very clear. Humans were allowed to exist. They were not allowed to matter. Admiral Park Sun-woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, watching the endless darkness of space through the viewing window. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. His uniform was simple, without the medals and decorations that officers from other species wore like peacocks. Humans had learned long ago that pride was something the Council did not allow them to have. His communication officer, a young woman named Beek Somi, turned from her station with confusion on her face. "Admiral, we are receiving an emergency signal from Elysium 7. Sun-woo felt something cold settle in his stomach. Elysium 7 was a small farming colony on the edge of human space. 40,000 people lived there, growing food and raising families far from the politics of Earth. His sister, Una, lived there with her husband and 2 children. His nephew Doyan had just turned 7 years old last month. Sun-woo had missed the birthday party because of patrol duty. He had promised to visit soon. "Put it through," he said. The main screen flickered to life. Instead of a face, there was only static and screaming. Through the broken transmission, Sun-woo could see fire falling from the sky. Buildings were melting. People were running, but there was nowhere to run. Then the signal died. "Get me Elysium 7 command," Sun-woo ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands had begun to shake. So I tried again and again. Nothing. She looked up at her admiral with tears forming in her eyes. "Sir, I cannot reach anyone on the colony. All channels are dead." Sun-woo turned to his navigation officer. "How fast can we get there?" 6 hours at maximum speed, Admiral."
6 hours.
Whatever was happening would be over long before they arrived. Sun-woo knew this. He also knew he had to try. "Take us there. Now." Eternal Dawn jumped to faster than light speed, but it was already too late. It had been too late from the moment the first Council warship entered the Elysium system. When they arrived, there was nothing left. The planet that had once been green and blue was now black and gray. The oceans had boiled away. The forests had burned to ash. The cities were craters. 40,000 men, women, and children had been turned to dust in less than an hour. Sun-woo stood at the viewing window and stared at what remained of his sister's world. Somewhere down there, in the ashes and the ruin, were the bodies of Yuna and her husband. Somewhere down there was little Doyan, who liked to draw pictures of starships and dreamed of being an admiral like his uncle. The bridge was silent. No one knew what to say. There were no words for something like this. Hours later, the truth became clear. The Galactic Council had ordered the attack. High Arbiter Velos of the Neth species, the most powerful voice in the Council, had declared that Elysium 7 was in violation of expansion treaties. The humans there had built a new school without proper permission. They had planted crops in a zone that was supposed to remain empty. For these crimes, 40,000 people had been sentenced to death. But that was not the worst part. The worst part came when Velos made his announcement to the galaxy. "The human colony of Elysium 7 has been pacified," the High Arbiter said in his cold, clicking voice. His species had evolved from insects, and they had never understood warmth or mercy. This action was necessary to maintain order. "We expect Earth to issue a formal apology for forcing us to take such measures." The humans provoked this response. The fault is theirs. Sun-woo watched the announcement from his quarters. When it ended, he sat in the darkness for a long time. Then he began to write a letter to Earth Command, requesting permission to resign his position so he could do what needed to be done. Before he could finish, new orders arrived. He was to return to Earth immediately. The Parliament was gathering on Earth. President Kong Jun had already seen the footage from Elysium 7. She was 53 years old, a former diplomat who had spent her whole career trying to find peaceful solutions to impossible problems. She had shaken hands with High Arbiter Velos. She had smiled and nodded and accepted insults dressed as compliments. She had believed that patience would eventually earn humanity a real place among the stars. Now she sat alone in her office, watching a video that someone had recovered from the colony's last moments. It showed a classroom full of children singing a song about Earth. It's about green hills and blue oceans, and a home they had never seen. The teacher was trying to keep them calm. She was telling them that everything would be okay. Then the roof turned to fire, and the video ended. June wiped her eyes and stood up. She had made a decision. When the Parliament gathered, representatives from every human world were present. Some had traveled for days to be there. The great hall was full, and the silence was heavy with grief and anger. June walked to the podium. She did not have a prepared speech. She did not need one. 50 years ago, we reached the stars and found that we were not welcome, she began. We were told to be quiet. We were told to be small. We were told that if we followed the rules, we would be safe. We followed the rules. Elysium 7 followed the rules. 40,000 of our people followed the rules, and now they are dead. She paused, looking out at the faces of her people. She saw grief. She saw fear. But beneath those things, she saw something else. She saw fire. I have spent my whole life believing that peace was possible. I've spent my whole life being wrong. The Council does not want peace with us. They want obedience. They want us on our knees, thanking them for allowing us to breathe. I will not kneel anymore. Her voice rose, filling the hall. The question before this Parliament is simple. How long do we remain on our knees? How many more colonies must burn? How many more children must die singing songs about a home they will never see? She stopped. The silence stretched. I call for a vote. Do we continue to beg for mercy from those who have none? Or do we stand up and make them understand that humanity will not be erased? The vote was taken. Every single representative voted the same way. Earth had chosen war. The council station called Nexus Prime was the largest structure in the known galaxy. It hung in the void between stars like a metal flower, its petals reaching out for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. 12 great towers rose from its center, one for each species of the council. The human tower was the smallest and the newest. Added only 30 years ago, as a gesture of what the council called generosity, Ambassador Choi Minho walked through the grand hallway that led to the council chamber. He was a small man with round glasses and a gentle face that made people underestimate him. He had been a professor of history before becoming a diplomat, and he had always believed that understanding the past was the key to surviving the future. Today, he carried a small black box under his arm. It was the size of a book and weighed almost nothing. It contained the end of an era. The guards at the chamber doors were Neth soldiers. Tall insect-like creatures with forearms and eyes that never blinked. They looked at Minho with contempt, as they always did. To them, humans were barely worth noticing. Minho smiled politely and waited for them to open the doors. The council chamber was a massive circular room with 12 elevated seats, arranged around a central platform. Each seat was designed to match the species that occupied it. The Neth High Arbiter Velos sat on a throne of black metal that looked like frozen shadows. The Volari representative floated in a tank of green liquid. The Keth ambassador, a massive creature covered in bone plates, sat on a simple stone block. The human seat was empty. It was always empty during important meetings. Humans were allowed to observe, not to participate. Minho walked to the center platform and stood calmly, the black box tucked under his arm. The 12 representatives looked down at him like giants examining an insect. Ambassador Choi Minho of Earth, Velos said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You requested an audience. We have granted it, though we cannot imagine what you have to say that would interest us. Perhaps you have come to apologize for your species' continuous failures? Quiet laughter rippled through the chamber. I have come to deliver a message from the United Earth Parliament, Minho said. His voice was soft but clear, then deliver it quickly. We have important matters to discuss. Minho nodded. He set the black box on the platform and opened it, but he did not activate it yet. Instead, he began to speak. 50 years ago, humanity joined the galactic community. We were young and eager and hopeful. We believed that among the stars, we would find wisdom and friendship. Instead, we found the council. Velos made a sound that might have been amusement. Are we to endure a history lesson from a species that barely understands history? Please let me finish, Minho said, still calm. For 50 years, we obeyed every rule you created. When you told us to limit our fleet, we scrapped ships that took decades to build. When you told us to stop weapons research, we closed laboratories and destroyed data. When you told us where we could and could not go, we stayed in our little corner of the galaxy and did not complain. He paused, adjusting his glasses. In return, you taxed our trade until our colonies starved. You sent peacekeeping forces that killed our people for minor offenses. You treated us as servants, as animals, as things that existed only for your convenience. We accepted this. We told ourselves that patience would earn us respect. We were wrong. The chamber had grown quiet. Some of the representatives were actually listening now. 3 weeks ago, you destroyed the colony of Elysium 7. 40,000 human civilians were killed. Men, women, children, families eating dinner, students sitting in classrooms, babies sleeping in their beds. You burned them all, and then demanded that we apologize for making you do it. Velos leaned forward on his throne. The colony violated expansion treaties. The action was justified. The colony built a school without filing the proper forms, Minho said quietly. Children died because of paperwork. The rules exist for a reason. Your species has always struggled with following rules. Minho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You were absolutely right, High Arbiter. We have struggled with your rules. We have struggled very much indeed. He pressed a button on the black box. And the air above the platform came alive with light. The hologram showed shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, stretching for thousands of kilometers. It showed fleets of warships that did not exist in any Council database. Thousands of vessels carrying weapons that made Council technology look like children's toys. It showed research stations buried on frozen moons. Factories working day and night in places that were supposed to be empty. The Council representatives stared in silence. For 50 years you watched us, Minho continued. You monitored our shipyards and inspected our factories and read our communications. You believed you knew everything about us, but you only saw what we wanted you to see. He gestured at the hologram, which now showed technical diagrams of weapon systems. While your inspectors counted our official fleet of 200 ships, we were building 2,000 more in places you never thought to look. While you banned our weapons research, we were developing systems that your scientists cannot even imagine. Kinetic accelerators that can punch through any shield. Gravity bombs that can crush a dreadnought into the size of a stone. Adaptive missiles that learn and grow smarter with every attack. Velos rose from his throne, his forearms spreading wide in what might have been anger or fear. This is impossible. Our intelligence would have detected such activity. Your intelligence detected exactly what we allowed it to detect. We are humans, High Arbiter. We have been lying to stronger enemies since before we learned to write. It is what kept us alive on our own world, and it is what we have been doing here. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives were shouting at each other at their aides. At Minho, only the Keth ambassador remained silent. Watching the human with something that might have been respect, Minho raised his hand. And somehow, the gesture cut through the chaos. The room fell quiet again. I said I came to deliver a message. Here it is. He straightened his back and spoke clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, the United Earth Parliament. Speaking for all human worlds and all human peoples, hereby declares that a state of war exists between humanity and the Galactic Council. This war will continue until the Council agrees to our terms, or until the Council no longer exists. Velos made a sound like breaking glass. You cannot be serious. Even with your hidden fleet, you are one species against 12. You will be destroyed. Perhaps Minho said, but I do not think so. You have never fought a real war, High Arbiter. None of you have. You have conquered weaker species and bullied smaller nations, but you have never faced an enemy that truly wanted you dead. We are that enemy now. He closed the black box and picked it up. Final warning. Our fleet is already moving. Every military installation, every warship, every armed station that belongs to the Council is now a target. We suggest you begin evacuating civilian populations from military zones. We will give you time to do so. We are not monsters. He began walking toward the exit. Unlike you, he added without turning around. Velo screamed something in his own language, but Minho did not stop. The doors opened before him, and he walked out of the council chamber for the last time, behind him. The galaxy's oldest alliance began to crumble in fear. Commander Li Yunji sat in the command chair of the battleship. Silent Thunder, watching her tactical display with calm eyes. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment for years. They had run simulations and practiced drills and prepared for a war that most of the galaxy thought would never happen. Now the war had come, and Yunji intended to win it. Her fleet hid in the shadow of a gas giant called Vorostri, a massive ball of orange and red storms that blocked all sensor readings. 800 human warships waited there, powered down to minimum levels. Invisible to anyone who was not looking in exactly the right place, they had been waiting for 2 days, Commander, her sensor officer said quietly. Council fleet is entering the system. 10,000 ships. 10,000. Yunji allowed herself a small smile. The Council had assembled the largest military force in galactic history to crush the human rebellion. They had called ships from every member species, gathered their greatest admirals, and created an armada that could conquer entire star systems. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Let them come deeper into the system, Yunji ordered. Wait until they pass the third moon. She watched the display as the Council fleet moved forward like a great metal cloud. Their formation was beautiful in a way. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that looked impressive but left them vulnerable to concentrated fire. This was not a formation designed for real war. This was a formation designed for parades and intimidation. The Council had never needed to fight a real war. They had always been the strongest power in the galaxy. When they wanted something, they took it. When someone resisted, they crushed them with overwhelming numbers. They did not understand what it meant to face an enemy that had nothing left to lose. Commander, the enemy fleet has passed the third moon. They are heading toward the inner planets. Yunji stood up. Power up all weapons. Signal the fleet to prepare for attack. Round her, the silent thunder came alive. Lights flickered on across every station. The great engines began to hum with energy. In the weapons bays, kinetic rounds the size of small cars were loaded into magnetic accelerators. Missile pods, open like flowers made of steel. Fleet is ready, Commander. Took a deep breath. She thought about Elysium 7. She thought about the children who had died singing. She thought about all the years of humiliation and fear and hiding. Attack. The human fleet emerged from the shadow of Vorostri like ghosts, becoming solid. 800 ships, moving in perfect coordination, their weapons already tracking targets. The Council fleet detected them immediately. But detecting them and stopping them were very different things. The first volley came from the kinetic accelerators. These weapons fired solid metal slugs at nearly the speed of light, and they hit the Council ships before anyone could react. Shields that had been designed to stop energy weapons shattered like glass. Holes that had never known damage were torn open. In the first 30 seconds, 200 Council ships became clouds of debris. The Council fleet tried to respond. Their own weapons fired, energy beams and plasma bolts and guided missiles streaking across the void. But human ships were fast and small and impossible to target. They moved like dancers, dodging between attacks, never staying in one place long enough to hit. Launch the swarm missiles, Yunji ordered. Thousands of small missiles erupted from the human fleet. Each one carried an artificial intelligence that learned and adapted as it flew. When the Council point defense systems tried to shoot them down, the missiles changed their patterns. When shields blocked them, they found gaps and weaknesses. When they were destroyed, the surviving missiles absorbed the data and became smarter. The Council formation began to collapse. Ships that had been arranged in perfect patterns were now scattered and confused. Admirals who had never commanded in real combat gave orders that contradicted each other. Some ships tried to advance, Others tried to retreat, and they crashed into each other in the chaos, and watched her display and felt nothing. Not joy, not satisfaction, not even anger. She simply did what needed to be done. Bring us closer. Target their command ships. The silent thunder dove into the heart of the Council fleet, weaving between burning hulks and spinning debris. Its main gun, a massive kinetic accelerator that ran the entire length of the ship, fired again and again. Each shot was precise. Each shot killed a ship. Around the silent thunder, other human vessels did the same. They struck like wolves attacking a confused herd, picking off the strong and scattering the weak. The Council ships could not keep up. Their weapons were too slow, their tactics too rigid. Their commanders too inexperienced. One of the Neth dreadnoughts, a massive vessel that was supposed to be the pride of the Council fleet, tried to rally the others. Its admiral broadcast commands across all frequencies. Demanding that the ships regroup and counterattack, Yunji targeted the dreadnought personally. The Silent Thunder's main gun C harged for 3 seconds, then fired. The kinetic round crossed 200 kilometers of space in an instant and struck the dreadnought directly in its bridge. The front third of the ship disappeared in a flash of light. The rest drifted lifelessly, leaking air and fire. After that, the Council fleet stopped trying to fight. They ran. Ships jumped to faster than light speed without coordination, without orders, without looking where they were going. Some crashed into each other as their jump fields overlapped. Some flew into the gas giant by accident. Some made it out of the system, carrying stories of terror to spread across the galaxy. When the battle ended, fewer than 200 Council ships had escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Human losses were 43 ships. Most of those crews had been rescued before their vessels exploded. Youngji sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking now, though they had been steady throughout the fight. The reality of what had just happened was starting to sink in. Commander, her communications officer said, "We are receiving messages from across the galaxy. News of the battle is spreading." What are they saying? The Vulari have closed their borders and are demanding negotiations. The Keth are mobilizing their home fleet, but have not moved against us. 3 minor species have announced they are leaving the Council. Yunji nodded slowly. And the Neth. High Arbiter Velos has declared that this battle changes nothing. He says the Council will regroup and destroy us. Of course he does. Yunji stood up and looked at her crew. They were young, most of them. They had grown up under Council oppression, told that they were lesser beings, forced to bow their heads and accept insults. Now, they had won the first great victory in human history. "Tell Admiral Sunwoo that the path is clear," she said. "Phase 2 can begin." Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humanity had faced the greatest military force ever assembled, and they had shattered it like glass. The Council was not invincible. The Council could bleed, and now Admiral Park Sunwoo was moving toward the Neth home system. With the Second Fleet, Velos had ordered the death of 40,000 humans on Elysium 7. The Admiral intended to show him what that decision would cost. The war had only begun, and already the galaxy was learning to fear a species it had always dismissed as weak. The humans were coming, and they were not going to stop. The Neth homeworld was called Netherus, and it had never known war. For 6,000 years, since the Neth first reached the stars and began building their empire, no enemy had ever come to their home. They had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed countless civilizations, but they had always done so far away. In distant systems, where the screaming could not be heard, now human warships filled their sky, and the Neth finally understood what fear felt like. Admiral Park Sunwoo stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched the planet below. It was a dark world, covered in black forests and gray oceans, lit by a pale sun that gave everything a shadowy look. 3 billion Neth lived on that world. 3 billion members of the species that had ordered his sister burned alive. He felt nothing when he looked at them. Not hate, not anger, not even the cold satisfaction of revenge. He had felt those things once in the days after Elysium 7, but they had burned out of him like fuel from an engine. Now there was only duty and the grim knowledge of what needed to be done. Admiral His, communications officer, said, "The Neth government is hailing us. They are demanding to know our intentions. Open a channel. Broadcast to all frequencies so everyone on the planet can hear." The screen flickered and the face of a Neth official appeared. It was not Velos, just some lesser bureaucrat with terror in his multiple eyes. "Human vessel, you are in violation of sovereign Neth space. You must withdraw immediately or face consequences." Sunwoo did not respond to the official. Instead, he spoke to everyone. "People of Netheris, I am Admiral Park Sunwoo of the United Earth Navy. 3 weeks ago, ships from your fleet destroyed the human colony of Elysium 7. 40,000 of my people were killed. Among them were my sister Yuna, her husband Timon, and my nephew Doyan. My nephew was 7 years old. He liked to draw pictures of starships. He dreamed of flying among the stars someday." He paused, letting his words sink in across an entire world. "Your High Arbiter Velos ordered this attack. He called it necessary correction. He demanded that we apologize for making him kill our children. We have come to give him our response." The Neth official was trying to interrupt, but Sunwoo ignored him. "I am not here to destroy your civilization. I am not here to murder your civilians. We are humans, and we do not burn children in their schools. But your military will be dismantled. Your government will answer for what it has done, and your High Arbiter will face justice." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "You have 12 hours? During this time, all civilians are free to leave military installations and government buildings. Evacuate your soldiers' families from their bases. Remove the innocent from the guilty. We will not fire on refugee ships or civilian transports. When the 12 hours end, everything that remains will be considered a legitimate target." He ended the transmission without waiting for a reply. The next 12 hours were chaos on Netheris. Millions of Neth tried to flee military zones. Soldiers abandoned their posts to save their families. Politicians who had spent their careers supporting Velos suddenly discovered they had always opposed him. The government that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years collapsed in half a day. Velos himself tried to escape. He had a private ship waiting at a secret location, loaded with treasure and supplies for a long journey. He planned to flee to the Outer Rim and rebuild his power from there. But when he reached the ship, his own guards were waiting for him. They had decided that their best chance of survival was to offer the High Arbiter to the humans as a gift. They were wrong. But they did not learn this until later. When the 12 hours ended, Admiral Sunwoo gave the order. The bombardment began with precision strikes on military headquarters and weapon factories. Human ships used kinetic rounds that could be aimed with perfect accuracy, destroying single buildings while leaving nearby structures untouched. This was not the crude burning that the Neth had done to Elysium 7. This was surgery. Removing a cancer without killing the patient, but it was still destruction. And the Neth watched in horror as their mighty war machine was taken apart piece by piece. Orbital stations that had defended their system for centuries were shattered. Shipyards that had built the feared Neth dreadnoughts were reduced to scrap. Military academies, where generations of soldiers had trained, became craters in the ground. The second phase was the marine landings. Human soldiers descended on key targets across the planet, their dropships cutting through the atmosphere like falling stars. They were looking for specific people, the ones who had ordered Elysium 7, the ones who had implemented the policies of cruelty and oppression. Major Yoon Jie led one of these teams. She was a small woman with a scar across her face and eyes that had seen too much death. Her target was a military complex where several high-ranking Neth officers were hiding. The complex's defenses were already broken by the orbital strikes. But the Neth soldiers inside still tried to fight. They died quickly. Human weapons were better, and human soldiers had spent their entire lives preparing for this kind of combat. The Neth had spent their lives bullying weaker species and had never learned how to face a real enemy. Jie found the officers hiding in an underground bunker. There were 7 of them, all responsible for various atrocities against human colonies over the years. One of them had personally ordered the destruction of a human. refugee ship carrying 3,000 people who were trying to escape a famine. Another had designed the policies that kept human worlds poor and dependent. She arrested them all. No torture, no revenge killings, no cruelty. They would face proper trials, with evidence and witnesses and a chance to defend themselves. They would receive more justice than they had ever given to humanity. Some of her soldiers did not understand this. They wanted blood. They wanted to make the Neth suffer the way humans had suffered. GA gathered them together and spoke quietly. I know what you are feeling. I feel it too. But if we become them, then we have not won anything. We have just become a different kind of monster. Our victory means nothing if we lose who we are. She looked at each of them. We are human. We are better than this. Remember Elysium 7, but do not let it turn you into something the children there would be ashamed of. The soldiers obeyed. Not because they were ordered to, but because they understood. 3 days later, the Neth military no longer existed. Their fleet was scattered or destroyed. Their installations were rubble. Their leaders were in human custody, waiting for trial. The species that had dominated the galaxy for 6,000 years was now helpless. Admiral Sun Wu made one final broadcast to Nethris before his fleet departed. Your war is over. Your empire is finished. But you are not destroyed. Your civilians are alive. Your cities still stand. Your culture and history remain intact. This is not because we could not destroy you. It is because we chose not to. He thought about Yuna and Do-Yin and all the others who had died. On Elysium 7, you showed us no mercy. We have shown you more than you deserve. Remember this. Remember that when humanity had the power to end you, we did not use it. Remember that when we had every reason to burn your world as you burned ours, we held back. He turned away from the screen. We are not you. We will never be you. And that is why we won. The Eternal Dawn jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the broken Neth Empire behind. There were still other council species to deal with, other powers that needed to understand the new reality of the galaxy. But the hardest part was over. The species that had caused the most pain had paid the highest price. Now it was time to end the war and build something better. The war lasted for months. By the standards of galactic history, it was barely a moment. By the standards of the species who fought it, it changed everything. After the fall of the Neth, the other council members reacted in different ways. Some surrendered immediately, their governments collapsing under the weight of their own fear. Others tried to fight, believing that their species was different, that they would succeed where the mighty Neth had failed. The Keth were the most stubborn. They were a warrior species, covered in bone armor and raised from birth to believe that death in battle was the greatest honor. They gathered their fleets and attacked human positions across 12 systems, fighting with courage and determination and absolutely no understanding of what they were facing. It took 3 weeks to break them. Not because human forces struggled, but because Admiral Sun Wo wanted to give the Keth every chance to surrender. He did not enjoy killing. None of the human commanders did. This war was necessary, but that did not make it pleasant. In the end, the Keth War Council agreed to talk. Their greatest general, a massive creature named Sor, whose body was covered in scars from 100 battles, met with Sun Wu on a neutral station. They faced each other across a simple table, two soldiers who had done terrible things in service to their peoples. We have fought many species, Sor said in his rumbling voice. We have always won. Until now. Sun Wu nodded. You are brave fighters? Your soldiers died well. They died for nothing. We cannot defeat you. Your weapons are too strong, your tactics too clever, your will too fierce. Sor made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. We looked at humanity and saw weakness. We saw a species that talked instead of fighting, that built instead of conquering. We thought you were prey. We tried to be peaceful, Sun Wu said. You punished us for it, and now you punish us. Sor lowered his massive head. The Keths surrender. Do with us what you will. Sun Wu studied the alien warrior for a long moment. We want nothing from you except peace. Keep your world, keep your culture, keep your pride. Just stop attacking us, and we will leave you alone. Sor looked up, confusion in his deep-set eyes. No tribute? No slaves? No territories? No. Then why did you fight? Sun Wu thought about Yuna and Doyen and all the others who had died. Because you gave us no choice. The Valari surrendered next, then the remaining council species one by one. Some required demonstrations of force, others simply needed to see the writing on the stars. Within 4 months, every member of the Galactic Council had accepted defeat. The final ceremony took place on Nexus Prime, the great station where the Council had ruled for thousands of years. President Kong Jun arrived with a delegation of human diplomats and military officers. Admiral Sun Wu stood behind her, his face expressionless, his eyes seeing ghosts. The 12 council seats were arranged as they had always been, but most of them were empty now. Some species had lost their governments entirely and had no one to send. Others had sent new leaders, desperate to distance themselves from the old regime. High Arbiter Velos was notably absent. Currently waiting in a human prison for his war crimes trial, June walked to the center platform. It's the same spot where Ambassador Minho had declared war months earlier. She carried no black box, no holographic displays. She needed only her words. The Galactic Council is dissolved, she announced. The treaties it created are void. The restrictions it imposed are lifted. The era of one group of species ruling over all others is finished. She looked around at the frightened faces watching her. In its place, we propose a new organization. The United Galactic Assembly. Every species will have a voice. Decisions will be made by vote, not by force. Disputes will be settled through negotiation, not violence. One of the alien representatives raised a tentacle. And what of humanity? Will you rule over us, as we ruled over you? June shook her head. Humanity will hold one seat like everyone else. We will have one vote like everyone else. The only difference is that we will retain veto power over military action against any member world. We will not allow another Elysium 7. We will not allow another species to be burned from existence for building a school without permission. The chamber was silent. You have spent 50 years treating us as lesser beings, June continued. You have starved our colonies, murdered our people, and demanded that we thank you for it. You had every advantage, every weapon, every piece of technology that we lacked, and you still lost. She let that sink in. Not because we were stronger, not because we were more numerous. You lost because you were cruel, and cruelty makes you weak. You lost because you were proud, and pride makes you blind. You lost because you never stopped to ask what would happen if we fought back. Her voice softened. We do not want revenge. We do not want to rule. We want to live among the stars in peace, as equals, with neighbors who respect us as we will respect them. That is all we have ever wanted. The Council could not give it to us. Perhaps the Assembly can. She stepped back from the platform. The choice is yours. One by one, the representatives voted. Every species agreed to join the new assembly. Some did so eagerly, seeing an opportunity for better relations. Others did so reluctantly, understanding that they had no real choice. But all of them voted yes. The Galactic Council was dead. The United Galactic Assembly was born. 6 months later, Admiral Park Sun-woo stood on the surface of Elysium 7. The planet had been cleaned and healed and transformed into a memorial world. Where 40,000 people had once lived, there was now a garden that stretched from horizon to horizon. Trees from Earth grew beside flowers from 100 other planets. At the center of the garden stood a wall of black stone, and on that wall were carved 40,000 names. Sun-woo found his sister's name without difficulty. Yuna had always been easy to find. She had been the bright one, the hopeful one, the one who believed that the universe was basically good. Beside her name were those of her husband Temin and her son Do-yen. A young woman walked up beside him and placed flowers at the base of the wall. She was 22 years old, with her mother's eyes and her uncle's serious expression. Her name was Park Hannah, and she was the only member of the family who had survived the attack. She had been off-world that day, visiting a friend on a neighboring colony. They stood together in silence for a long time. Was it worth it? Hannah finally asked. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the wind that whispered through the garden. Sun Wu thought about the question carefully. He thought about the war and the killing and all the people on both sides who had died. He thought about the sleepless nights and the weight that would never leave his shoulders. He thought about his sister, who had wanted nothing more than to raise her children in peace. "Ask me when no one ever tries this again," he said. Hannah looked up at him. "Do you think they will?" Sun Wu lifted his eyes to the sky, where human warships patrolled in silent formation. They were guardians now, protectors of a peace that had been purchased with blood. The galaxy knew what humanity was capable of. The galaxy knew that there were lines that should never be crossed. "Not if they are wise," he said. "And if they are foolish, we will remind them." He placed his hand on the wall, touching his sister's name one last time. "The galaxy will remember Yuna, I promise you. They will remember what happened here, and they will remember what it cost them to make us their enemy, and they will never forget." Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy forever changed. Humanity had taken its place among them, not as servants, not as victims, not as the lesser species that could be ignored and abused, as equals, as protectors, as the ones who would never let another Elysium 7 happen again. The garden rustled in the wind, and somewhere among the flowers, a child laughed. Maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe it was the future. Promising that the sacrifices had not been in vain, Sun Wu listened to that laughter until it faded. Then he walked away. Leaving the dead to their peace and the living to their hope, the war was over. The real work was just beginning.